I think journalism already has evolved quite significantly in the last 20 years. Its business models have evolved, its organisation in terms of its staffing, its roles. Those have all evolved quite significantly, and partly to reflect the different role that journalism has in society. There's been an increased emphasis on fact-checking, there's an increased emphasis on data as a source of information, which partly reflects the importance of data more generally, but also the changing value of journalism and the need for journalism to do more than just tell us what people said. So the big change has been people and organisations' ability to communicate directly with audiences. I think what is likely to happen in the next 10 to 20 years is, first of all, more political and legal action around supporting journalism financially and protecting I guess the public sphere of information, which includes journalism. So protection against misinformation, protection against monopolies and corporate dominance of information space. But the big development for me will be how we interact with information and the way that generative AI makes it possible and probably expected that we don't just interact with information by reading it or listening to it or watching it, but we interact with information by a dialogue of questions, of prompts and responses, and generative AI acting as a mediator in that process. So a translator, basically, it's fundamentally a translation technology. So it translates information from, yes, from one language to another, but also a translation from one context to another, from one genre to another, from one level to another. And part of our role as journalists has always been about translation. We've always simplified things, clarified things, made it more engaging. So our role now is likely to increasingly be creating the raw material, so more of a focus on uncovering information, finding information, creating information that audiences can interact with through generative AI. And then I also think on the other end of things, I think there's an increased likelihood that we're going to become more storytellers in an old-fashioned sense. So for a large part of its history, certainly in the 20th century, journalism has been routinized, it's been, it's taken fixed shapes, and as journalists we operated within these fixed ways of telling stories. As those ways of telling stories become very easy to do, very formalized, I think you already see in the last 10 years, 20 years, an increased appreciation of someone who is really a creative storyteller, someone who can tell a story that stands out from millions of stories online. So, you think of things like Snowfall, or you think of things like S-Town and the Serial podcast. Those are, I think, indicators of where the value is going to be in journalism, potentially in the next couple of decades, and yeah, alongside ongoing political and legal change.